What's up, Jet Nation? We're back. Today is just going to be about draft. Last week was all about free agency. Today is going to be about the draft. Are you ready for the draft?
Yeah, I'm excited to see what Mike has to say. He's been whipping up this mock draft for us. Should be really good.
Let's get started.
He says, get over here. He says, get on my shoulders. I go on his shoulders. It's about the Jets. It's about the 12th man. It's about the home field advantage. What we did it for, not for so much attention, but it cost the other teams a lot of times they had to take an unnecessary time out.
I love this song. I know you do.
With my loyal
I challenge everybody to have their best game today. Do the same things that I was told, bro. We're going to come out victorious.
Yeah, with my loyal Jets fans, where y'all at? Yeah, yeah, with my New York Jets fans for the Jets podcast, where y'all at? Where y'all at?
What's going on, everyone? I'm Bobby McGinnis, back with Mike Morano, our draft expert. What's going on, Mike?
Nothing much, Bob. Excited to give you this mock draft finally.
I'm excited to hear it. We've been waiting quite some time now, hyping it up a little bit.
Yep.
So let's get right into it. Arizona Cardinals on the clock, #1 pick.
I think it's a split room right now. They're not really sure what they want to do. I think half the room wants to stick with Rosen, a guy that they drafted last year, traded up for. And then the other half of the room, Cliff Kingsbury, wants to go with Kyler Murray, his guy. And I think that's where they're going to end up going with. I think they go Murray with the first pick.
Yeah, a lot of rumors about that. Kyler Murray going #1 after they just drafted a quarterback. Mm-hmm. And now it seems like it might actually happen. So
yeah,
definitely would work in favor for the New York Jets at pick 3, but we'll see. So next pick, you have the Miami Dolphins. The Dolphins trade up with the 49ers. What did they have to give up to get there?
They give up their 13th pick in the first round this year. They give up a first rounder next year, and then 2 second rounders.
All right, so they gave up quite some luggage there.
Yep.
They gave a boatload to trade up there. They must be getting someone good. Who is it, Mike?
It's quarterback Dwayne Haskins. I mean, their quarterback right now is Ryan Fitzpatrick. The Jets know a lot about Fitzpatrick, of course, from his days with the Jets. He's not a guy you're building around, of course. He's a stopgap quarterback, a guy you have for a year or two. While your future quarterback, this being Dwayne Haskins, develops, gets to know the NFL, gets to know the playbook. I think they go Haskins here.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a fit for the Dolphins. Seeing if they trade up in real life or not is the real question there. So now we're going to move on to Gang Green. The New York Jets sit at pick 3, 2 quarterbacks off the board. Obviously, Jets are in a great position now.
Yeah.
What are they doing?
Well, Jets get lucky here. The best player in the draft drops to them, and Nick Bosa. He's a really good edge rusher from Ohio State. Some people think he's better than his brother, who's already an all-pro talent. They go with Nick Bosa.
All right, so tell me why the Jets go Bosa rather than a guy like Josh Allen, Quentin Williams. Why do they go with Nick Bosa?
Well, they go with Bosa instead of, as you said, Allen or Williams, because Bosa has longevity. He has been performing since his freshman year. He's a guy that, once he comes into the league, he's going to be a star. He's going to be as good or better as his brother. He's very comparable to a lot of the better defensive linemen in the NFL. And he's just a guy that knows going to give you 10 sacks and be a beast.
Yeah, well said. I mean, I would love if Nick Bosa was there for the Jets at pick 3. But moving on, we're looking at the Oakland Raiders. The new improved Raiders sit with, a lot of new pieces. They also have a couple picks in the first round.
3, I believe.
Where are they going with pick 4?
They go with a guy in Josh Allen. They traded Khalil Mack last year. The best pass rusher in the NFL. And then they ended up having the worst pass rush in the NFL.
Obviously needs some change there.
Yes, being last in the NFL in sacks. They get a guy in Josh Allen who can definitely help that number go up.
All right. So I could definitely see that happening as well. But now we look at Tampa Bay. The Buccaneers are on the clock at 5. Do they sit there? And if they do, who do they take?
They're going to go with Quentin Williams. Now, even though that defensive line is pretty good, they have Gerald McCoy, JPP, but both those guys are north the age of 30. Not really sure if they're going to be there, in the next few years. And when you have a defensive line class as stocked as this one is, you're going to go with Quentin Williams, a guy that is a top 3 talent.
So, Mike, I know you're a Giants fan and a Michigan fan. The Giants are at pick 6. Rashawn Gary's still on the board. Do they take him?
You already know they're taking Rashawn Gary. I mean, they have a hole. They have a lot of holes, the guys. But they definitely have a hole, essentially along the front 3. They have Dalvin Tomlinson. They have B.J. Hill. They need a third guy to be on that front. And they go with Rashawn Gary, guy with loads of potential, had a really good combine. And he can be arguably the best defensive lineman in the draft if everything pans out. But he also has the biggest bust potential as well.
Really athletic kid that they'd be drafting there. So now the Jacksonville Jaguars, they made a big signing in Nick Foles. A lot of people originally thought that maybe they'd be in the market for a quarterback come draft time. However, signing Nick Foles, obviously they filled that gap. Where do they go? Pick 7.
They fill another hole, and that's the offensive line. And they go with, in my opinion, best offensive lineman in the draft, in Jonah Williams. He's a guy that can play guard or tackle. He'll fill either hole for them. That was a big reason why the Jaguars didn't perform last year, because they had a lot of injuries along the offensive line. It was a big hole for them. They get the best guy.
All right, so now moving on, pick 8, we have the Detroit Lions. A lot of people are calling them the Detroit Patriots with all these signings that they've made coming from New England. However, in the draft, can't draft any Patriots, so who are they drafting?
They're going to go with Montez Sweat here, the edge rusher from Mississippi State. I mean, I know they signed Trey Flowers, did that big contract, but they still need a guy to be that edge rusher on the 3-4. They get Sweat, a guy who had a phenomenal 40 time, broke the record for defensive linemen, ran faster than most running backs. So he's a guy that I think the Lions are going to go with.
Well said. In closing, towards the end of our top 10 here, pick 9. Buffalo Bills, another team in the AFC East drafting in the top 10. Where do the Bills go here?
Well, in the beginning of the offseason, they had a lot of needs on the offensive side of the ball.
Wide receiver specifically.
And they filled that need with John Brown, giving him a contract, Cole Beasley, tight end Tyler Kroft. And then offensive line was also a big need for them. And they filled that, again, through free agency, getting former Jet Spencer Long, getting tackle Ty Nsekhe, center Mitch Morse. So I think they go on the defensive side with this pick. Get a guy in defensive tackle, Ed Oliver, to replace longtime captain for the Buffalo Bills, Kyle Williams, who recently retired.
Okay, yeah, a lot of people, there's some speculation. Ed Oliver originally projected maybe a top pick, if not the number 1 pick. He drops a little bit. A lot of people are a little worrisome of his personality. Where does that come into play when he translates to the NFL?
Yeah, there's that whole thing when he had that fight with his coach, his college coach, on the sidelines. But I think once he goes to the NFL, the Bills, they have good coaches over there, good coaching staff. They'll get his head right, get his mind right, just have him focus on football.
All right, so pick 10. The Denver Broncos are now on the clock. What are they doing, Mike?
Well, they're looking to add more weapons. They're still trying to win. They just traded for Joe Flacco to be their starting quarterback. So they're going to add a guy in DK Metcalf, an athletic monster. He stands at about 6'3", 6'4". We saw what he did at the Combine. And they traded Demaryius Thomas last year at the deadline. They need more weapons. They get Metcalf. And
now Metcalf could be arguably one of the best receivers in this draft. They get him at pick 10. I think that's a pretty good value pick.
Yeah, without a doubt. Especially with, how wide receiver class is looking this year. Very good choice.
All right, so after hearing your top 10 picks in the first round, we're now going to take a short break. But once we come back, we're going to see how the rest of this first round shakes out.
Yep.
Coming home, when you coming home, I don't wanna be alone, I don't wanna be alone, yeah. When you coming home, when you coming home, I don't wanna be alone, I don't wanna be alone, yeah. I'm tired of seeing you hurting, all of the scars you earn. Feel like you need me, that constant reminder of how you worth. You say that you're doing just fine, but you say that every time, and judging by that whole response, I already know that you're lying. Here we go again, oh Lord, like here we go again. Type it all up, can't press it. Pouring up with all your friends. Keep telling me it's been a long night. But a couple more drinks will make you right. Taking off them heels, they way too tight. Take it out on me and start a fight. The things you saying, girl, it's certain I ain't perfect, but I promise it's all worth it.
So we just heard the top 10. Now we're going to dive into the rest of the draft. We're going to wrap them off a little quicker, though, this time. So now we have the Cincinnati Bengals, pick 11.
Yep, they're going to go with Devin White here, best linebacker in this year's class. They have a lot of holes, the Bengals, across the board, especially at linebacker, though, especially after releasing Burfict. They go with Devin White.
All right, and pick 12, we have the Packers.
Yeah, they're going to go with Noah Fant from Iowa, the tight end. Jimmy Graham was very disappointing for them last year. You know, I can see them cutting ties with him. And they get a guy, you know, they already addressed their holes on defense through free agency. They're going to get a guy.
Okay, well, real quick, I just want to kind of ask you, pick your brain on it. What's the difference between Iowa tight ends Fant and Hawkinson?
Fant is more of a guy, he's more of an athletic guy. He's more of a guy that, you know, has a lot more potential. You know, Hawkinson's more of a guy who's better blocking, more two-dimensional than Fant.
More all around.
Exactly.
Okay, yeah, I think that, you know, that versatile player could fit good in the Packers' offensive scheme.
Yeah, without a doubt.
So moving on, pick 13, you did have that trade.
Yeah.
Should be the Dolphins, however, in the mock trade, it is the 49ers. Moving down, who do they draft at pick 13?
They go with A.J. Brown here. You know, they need more weapons for Jimmy G. You know, they only have really Goodwin and Garcon, who they lost, and they need to replace him.
Greg Kittle as well. Tight end.
George Kittle, yes, but you know you still need more wide receivers, need more weapons. They go with A.J. Brown.
All right, so now we have the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah, they're going with the cornerback here, Greedy Williams. You know, they lost Poole to the Jets in free agency. They cut Alford. They need a guy to pair up with Trufant. They go with Greedy Williams.
All right, so moving quickly, we're now at pick 15, Washington Redskins. Who are they drafting?
Well, they lose Preston Smith in free agency to the Packers. They need a guy to replace him.
They lost Jamison Crowder, wide receiver, as well to the Jets.
Yeah, but I think wide receiver a little bit of reach here at 15, especially when you have a guy like Cleveland Farrell who is available.
And Metcalf's off the board as well as A.J. Brown.
So they go Farrell here to replace Smith and pair him with Ryan Kerrigan.
All right, I like that pick a lot. So now Carolina Panthers are on the clock, pick 16.
Yeah, they have a need at left tackle. They just cut their left tackle, Matt Khalil, after giving him a big contract a few years ago. Did not pan out. It was horrible for them. And they go with Juwan Taylor here to fill that role, you know, help solidify the offensive line.
Definitely not a sexy pick, however, a much-needed one.
Exactly.
All right, so we move on. Now the Giants are on the clock. They have acquired this pick from the Browns in the Odell Beckham trade.
Yep. With Metcalf gone, with Greedy Williams gone, I see them going to fill another hole out of the many that they do have at right tackle. Andre Dillard, one of the better tackles, especially in the pass protection.
So pick 18, the Minnesota Vikings are on the clock. Where are they going midway through the first round?
Well, their offensive line, again, was horrible last year. Big reason why they didn't make the playoffs last year, why they, you know, were overhyped, that you could say. And they go with Cody Ford, a guy that can fill in either tackle or guard. He's kind of a raw player, but loads of potential.
All right. So now pick 19, the Tennessee Titans are now on the clock. Mike, what are you thinking here?
Tennessee, they're going to beef up their defensive line, go with Christian Wilkins, you know, a guy from Clemson, you know, played alongside Cleveland Farrell and Dexter Lawrence. You know, really good player from Clemson. You know, also a guy that can help with the defensive line alongside Jarrell Casey.
All right, and now the Steelers, they've been working hard over the last couple of seasons to improve their defense. Do they go defense again here at pick 20?
They do. You know, Shazier, you know, he's still hurt. We have no idea if he will ever be able to come back from that horrific injury. So they get a guy, Michigan man, Devin Bush, guy that I personally loved watching in his years at Michigan. Great middle linebacker. Even though he's a little undersized, has great speed.
All right, and pick 21, we have the Seattle Seahawks on the clock.
Yep, they're going with the edge rusher here, and Brian Burns from Florida State. You know, they re-signed Frank Clark with the franchise tag. They still need another guy to pair with him. They go with Burns.
All right, I like the selection there. We're going to go to the Ravens now. Pick 22, picking at the later end of the round, as they did last year. They had 2 picks last year. We obviously know that they went with Lamar Jackson. And so now they're here, pick 22. Where are they going?
Well, their best wide receiver right now is Willie Snead. They need more weapons for Lamar Jackson. They go with N'Keal Harry, a wide receiver I personally love from Arizona State. He has a great combination of size, has some decent speed, really good hands. I think he can be a really good number 1 target for Lamar Jackson in the future.
All right, so the Texans eliminated early in the playoffs last year, picking at that 24 spot. What are they going here?
Well, they need to protect their number 1 asset in Deshaun Watson, which just did not happen last year. Offensive line was, again, horrible. They get a guy in Risner who can play both tackle or guard, and he can definitely help solidify that offensive line and protect Watson.
Yeah, well said. So the Raiders are back on the clock, their second pick out of 3 in the first round. What are they doing here?
They're going with tight end T.J. Hawkinson, you know, the second Iowa tight end to be picked in the first round. You know, Iowa keeps producing those tight ends, but they let Jared Cook go. You know, they need a guy to replace him. They go with Hawkinson.
I think that's a very good pick. Like you said, they lost Cook, although they have, you know, gained some other wide receivers as well.
They got the best one in
Antonio
the NFL.
Brown. So Now, after the Raiders, pick 25, we have the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yep, they're going to go with Byron Murphy. They had a lot of problems at cornerback last year. A lot of guys got hurt. They ended up having like 4th and 5th string guys starting in the playoffs. They need to add more depth. They go with Byron Murphy.
All right, so next up is the Colts. They had a little bit of an underwhelming free agency, I would say. A lot of people really expected them to go crazy and compete with the Jets on a lot of people, considering how much cap space they had. However, now they're in the draft. They're going to add another player. Who may that be?
Cornerback DeAndre Baker. He's a guy that's not too flashy, but he's reliable. He's a good shutdown corner, and they need another guy to help the depth.
All right, so the Raiders are back on the clock. Their third and final pick of the round. Where are they going here?
They're going to go with running back, the first running back to go off the board, Josh Jacobs from Alabama. Lynch is not on the team anymore. They need a guy to be kind of an every down back. Jacobs is the best running back in this class. They go with him.
Yeah, and he was one of a few running backs that Alabama used. And even with shared production, we saw how excellent he was.
Very impressive.
Still putting up a lot of stats. I think he would work really good in Oakland.
Agreed.
So now, pick 28. The Chargers from LA are now on the clock.
They go with Jeffrey Simmons, defensive lineman. He's a guy that if it wasn't for the off-the-field issues, he would be a top 10 pick. He would be comparable to the Nick Bosa's, Quinn Williams, Josh Allen's. But he's had injuries. He had off-the-field issues, which you don't like to see, of course. But they take a chance here.
All right, so next up we have the Kansas City Chiefs. Lost a lot of defensive players this year. Although, what are they doing in the draft?
Well, they're switching to the 4-3. And they get a guy in Jalen Ferguson who can be a DN, helping that transition.
Yeah, I really think that's a great pick. We saw them, lose Justin Houston, D Ford. They now have that hole, and like you said, they fill it great here in the draft. So now, pick 30, closing at the end of the first round, the Packers back on the clock.
Yeah, this is where Jerry Tillery goes. I almost read that one off before. But yeah, Jerry Tillery, he'll be definitely a big need for the Packers, depth along that defensive line. Had a really good year last year, having 10.5 sacks and 8 tackles for loss. Very good player.
All right, so now we have the LA Rams. They fell in the Super Bowl to the New England Patriots, so there's still obviously some improvements that could be made.
Yeah, they have needs along the guard. They lost Saffold to the Titans, got that big contract. And they get a guy in Garrett Bradbury, one of the better guards in this year's draft from NC State. He can definitely fill the need.
All right, so now the New England Patriots on the clock now. Recent news is that Rob Gronkowski is retiring.
Yep.
So do they go offense here to try to get another weapon?
I do. I think they go with Marquise Brown, the speedster from Oklahoma. He's a guy that people compare to Tyreek Hill, a guy that can just get down the field and get that football.
Yeah, and that definitely helps because Josh Gordon as well probably won't be on the field for the Patriots.
He has his own issues, yeah. And they also lost Patterson to free agency. Chris Hogan's still a free agent. They need wide receivers. They need weapons to surround Brady.
Seems like year in and year out, though, Bill Belichick just produces whoever. And Tom Brady makes him look good as well. So I think that this is a definitely a great pick. Speed guy, as you mentioned, Marquise Brown.
Yep.
All right, so that's it for Mike's first-round mock draft.
Yep.
The first one, if there's any changes, I'm sure we'll get it to you. However, Mike Morano, thank you for joining us, our draft expert. I'm Bobby McGinnis. We're going to send it over back to Ali. This is the conclusion of our Week 5 episode, but before we sign off, there's a lot to update you guys on. Ali?
So we're going to talk about our own brand. So we're going to be launching our merchandise finally. You see us wearing our sweatshirts. He's wearing a sweatshirt. We're going to launch sweatshirts, graphic tees. We're going to have hats, winter hats, all types of apparel for you guys to buy. We're about to launch in the next 1 or 2 weeks. And we're actually going to maybe do a change on our logo. So we're actually working on maybe, the Jets are getting new unis and new logo, apparently. So we might want to revamp our brand a little bit. So that's something to look forward to. And then people are asking a lot of comments of getting a podcast going instead of them watching a YouTube video, which makes sense. So we listened to you guys, and now we're going to try to put it on SoundCloud, and we're going to start that in a couple of weeks as well. And then we're going to go transfer to Apple Music. So people who don't have Apple Music can listen to it on SoundCloud. So we got a lot of other things going on. We're working on a couple players and having events with them. I can't say the names right now, but stay tuned. We're working on it, and we're trying to bring as much. It's going to be an exciting year. That's all I can say.
Yeah, so I'm really excited. I'm sure you guys are as well. So that's about all we have for you this week, but make sure you stay tuned next week. Thank you for all your loyalty and support. I'm Bobby McGinnis alongside Aaliyah Shroff. Thank you, Mike, for joining us this week as well. That's about it. We'll see you next time.
See you guys.